Today I'll be replacing the bolt that's used to attach the gas strut to the body of the car. As you can see here, its nut has corroded away and dropped somewhere inside the body panel of the car. So the way I'm going to be doing this is using a jack nut, something that I spent a little bit of time researching and figuring out the best way to go about this. So the way the jack nut works is that as the bolt threads, it compresses the nut and locks it in place. Because the thread depth of the jack nut was about 2 millimeters deeper than the actual Volkswagen bolt, I had to pick up a couple of these other bolts from just a local hardware store in order for it to catch the thread and begin the compression. Okay, you're going to want to start off by boring a hole. Strongly recommend that you put a piece of Gorilla Tape or something against the rubber liner. And also when boring the hole, try not to make it too large. What you can do is, once you've gotten it to a certain point, if you have a tool like a Dremel, use that just to do the fine grinding, just to get it as close as possible with enough of an entrance for the jack nut to squeeze its way through. And the diameter of the jack nut is a little bit wider near the center of it, so it'll naturally compress as you're pushing it through, which you'll see shortly in the video. Okay, you can see here that I've finished the grinding process, and the diameter of the hole is enough that I can now get the jack nut with the bolt in it just far enough in that I know with a little bit of effort I'll be able to fully have it seated within the body panel of the car. Decided that this would be a good time to clean things up a little bit and use a little bit of Tremclad black rust resistant paint. Applied a couple of coats throughout this process. Again, totally up to you if you want to use OEM branded paint. I wasn't too concerned about the aesthetics here, so I thought this would be a good option just to give it a little bit of protection from rust. With everything now cleaned and painted, it's time to insert the jack nut with the bolt within it. So just get it seated enough, and what I did was used a Allen key along with a rubber mallet just to gently tap it into place. The jack nut now inserted, you're not going to be able to begin threading it until you use something like vice grips or something to lock onto the bolt as you thread, onto the nut as you thread the bolt. Probably a good time here is when you watch me fumble with the vice grip and Allen key, trying to keep things affixed and tightening at the same time to point out the cost of the materials. What it boils down to is 3 items: the jack nut, the washers, and the bolt. So the jack nuts, ended up picking those up from AliExpress. Couldn't find any local supplier of them. Tried the local hardware stores, even tried the specialty supplier of bolts and nuts, Profasco, and they didn't carry any jack nuts. Cost of that per unit was about 40 to 50 cents. The bolt I ended up getting from Profasco, I picked up a couple of them just of varying depth and ended up getting them for free. The gentleman working behind the counter, when I got there, asked me if there was anything else, and I said nope, just the washers and the 2 bolts, and he ended up giving them for free because there's a minimum purchase requirement there. So to save me from having to buy anything unnecessarily. He just said, go ahead and have them for free, which was great. Now on the extreme flip side, if I compare this to what Volkswagen wanted to charge me for fixing this, it was fairly astronomical. The quote was in and around the $700 range, and I thought that was absolutely crazy. So in the end, I think this worked out rather well. Once you're confident that you've threaded the bolt enough such that the jack nut has locked into place, it's now time to remove this temporary bolt. And you'll know the jack nut is compressed enough against the body panel because once you start to unscrew the bolt, the jack nut should not move whatsoever. If it does, no big deal. Just put the bolt back in and go through the earlier process using the vice grips to hold on to the jack nut until it compresses enough. Okay, so you're now nearing the end of the repair process. It's time to put the original bolt and thread it back in place. You know that you've compressed that jack nut enough because the bolt thread is now able to catch the threads of the jack nut. So at this point, you're going to want to compress it down enough that you have a very tight fit of the bolt against the jack nut. Something else I think that's worth pointing out here is even though my vehicle is a Volkswagen GTI, I'm pretty confident that this process can be applied to any vehicle that has a similar gas strut bolt assembly. I think the only thing to be aware of is just to be cognizant of the depth of the jack nut and the spacing that you have in the body panel where the nut itself has to enter. If it's too deep, of course, you may end up damaging the body panel. So you can check AliExpress to see if there's any nuts of varying depth. But I, again, myself was only able to locate this one on their site, but maybe with some additional searching, you may be able to find it on some other sites that are out there. Bolt now firmly in place. Thought it'd be a good time considering all of the additional scratching and light banging of the wrench and the vice grips against the body panel to give it a couple more coats of paint just for some added protection. I think it's worth restating here because you can see some light scratches on the Gorilla Tape, likely from the drilling process, that certainly having it there protected that rubber. All right, it's now time to reattach the gas cylinder. And it slots in quite nicely as it should. It's lined properly enough too, so it's got proper play on it. Okay, so now with the end properly attached to the body panel, it's time to attach the other end to the hatch. And after doing so, just move it up and down slowly just to make sure that everything's properly aligned and locked in place. I originally installed the gas strut ends the wrong way, so it's just a matter of quickly removing it and swapping it around to correct this. Let's say that the entire repair process took probably in the range of about 40 to 45 minutes to complete. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below. I'll be happy to respond. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a like. Thanks for watching.